Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for recognizing, understanding, and responding to the impact of traumatic stress webinar. We are excited to have with us this morning Renee Myers joining. Uh, she is a graduate of the University of Maryland and the Pennsylvania State University. She is a nationally certified school psychologist who worked in both the Prince William County in Virginia and Charles County in Maryland school system before retiring to become a full-time mom and a community volunteer. In addition to her professional training and experience with special education, Renee has personally navigated the system for two of her children. We are also excited to have with us today Melissa Blink. Melissa is the mom of seven children and has a bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland. She has spent most of her career in early childhood education, leading and directing preschool programs. Melissa is a registered Raising Kids with Big Baffling Behaviors course facilitator and works with parents and educators to support children who have been affected by trauma through foster care, adoption, and children with vulnerable nervous system. As an adoptee and former foster parent and an adoptive mother, she is passionate about helping others through the journey. And thank you for joining us. Please take it away.
Me. All right. So, thank you very much for having us here. And as we are with Forum Families Forward, and I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with Forum Families Forward, but we are a family-led resource center, and we are located right in Northern Virginia. Our offices are actually in Fairfax County, and we support foster, adoptive, and kinship families who are raising children, youth, and adults with specialized needs. And we also work a lot with professionals who work with our families. So we go into schools and other places and help with professionals to understand some of our unique needs. And we do a lot, as you'll hear today, about trauma and children who are facing trauma, who have faced trauma, and how to help them. We do things like free training. We do consultations to families. We do big events. We have a huge resource directory on our website. And then we also do peer support groups and some other classes that we'll talk about. And then we are also part of the Virginia Tiered System of Supports, which is part of the Virginia Department of Education project. So upcoming trainings, we do have this is the one program where we do have a fee to this program, and that's just because we need to buy the program, but this is Raising Kids with Big Baffling Behaviors, and this is going to be an 8-week course on Tuesday evenings starting in February, and I'll be leading it, and we will really be talking about, so as you go through this training today and you feel like, man, I just need more support, I just need more answers, feel like I'm, up against a wall with my kids. I just don't understand. I don't know what to do. This would be a really good training for you to come in and learn and kind of really understand more about the brain, more about the nervous system, and more about what's happening in not only our children's bodies, but even our own bodies too. And then we're also halfway through our FASD webinar, and FASD is fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. And that is, we're doing that for the month of January on Tuesday evenings. And we did a FASD 101 class, and then we talked yesterday. They did a whole webinar on how they go about diagnosing FASD, and then next week they'll be talking about occupational therapy and supporting those with FASD. And then we're real excited to be launching a whole new resource for families with FASD. And that will be discussed in the last webinar. If you sign up for the webinar, which the link should be in the chat, you will get the recordings for the two that have already been done, and then you will also get access to the two that are coming up. So we invite you to join us for those also. And starting, which will open on February 15th, we have an online training course that is free, and it's on demand. So you can just go on at any time and you can go on and learn, maybe you're struggling with trying to understand the special education system in the county, or maybe you'd like some more information about special education dispute resolution, or we're getting ready to start a new class there also on what you should know about functional behavior assessments. So those are things that you can go on in your own time, while you're sitting in the carpool line or, whatever, and just spend a few minutes. And it's an interactive training that you can do. And if you need certificates, you can get certificates of completion. But it's it's a really great training. So for anything that you might need for parenting. We also offer 2 different support groups. We have Forum Families Together, which is a support group that meets once a month virtually and once a month in person. And this is specifically for foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And then we also have a specific kinship kinship group that meets in Fairfax, again, once a month in Fairfax at a community center, and then once a month in virtually. And then when they meet in person, they also include childcare and dinner. So that is actually coming up this week. So if that's something that if you're a kinship family and would be interested in joining our support group, we would love to have you. And then again, the link will be in the chat. We're also getting ready to start a new class, which is Stronger Together, and it's a life skills class for children, kind of recommended for students in grades 6 through 9, and it's going to be in our office in Fairfax City, and that's going to also meet weekly on Tuesday evenings, and it will start in February, and they'll get pizza. I'm sure it says free dinner, but usually with our teens, they prefer pizza. So we'll do pizza every night. We ask that they come, consistently, and that's really going to be working on some life skills just to help them. And that will be open to any child. They don't have to be foster, adoptive, or kinship families. We just will welcome anybody who just kind of feels like maybe their kids need a little bit more help with some life skills. All right, and now we're going to launch a poll just so we can see who is here. If you could just, when the poll launches, just let us know if you are a kinship caregiver, a foster parent, adoptive parent, a birth parent, a step parent, a professional, or just an interested community member. And I think you can answer more than one if you're a couple of those things. So. Let's leave that open for another minute or so. Looks like we have a few kinship and adoptive parents, and then lots of birth parents and lots of professionals. So welcome. I hope that you will find all of this information very helpful for you. All right, we'll end the poll. Did we share the results? Everybody see it? All right, perfect. All right. All right, so our agenda today is just like the title says, we're going to talk about recognizing the impact of traumatic stress. Then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into just really understanding how it affects ourselves, how it affects our children, and then what ways that we can respond to the impact of traumatic stress. And I'm just going to let you know, we're just going to throw a lot of information at you. The great thing is this is being recorded. So, sit back, drink your coffee, just listen. You can take some quick notes, but just know that you can always go back and listen to the recording and get a copy of the slides so that you can go back with questions. But, there will be a lot of information, but we will also do some interactive things to keep it entertaining. So, all right, so take it away, Renee. Oh, Renee, you're now muted.
Thanks, Melissa. Trying to keep the background noise to a minimum. Thanks, everyone. So we're going to start by recognizing the impact of traumatic stress. Next slide, Melissa. So in this first section, we'll go over some trauma basics. We are going to look at the definition of trauma. We will talk about some events and experiences that might be traumatic for some people. And we'll also look at the impact of trauma and what it might look like. So, trauma refers to experiences that cause intense physical and psychological stress. And official definition we have here from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health is that it can refer to a single event, multiple events, or a set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically and emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. And what we really want to note here in this definition is the three E's that you see bolded. So, events. And that is that trauma can be a single event or it can be multiple events. Experiences. And really, what we want to think about here is that trauma is how it is experienced by that person. So what might be experienced as traumatic for one person might not be experienced as traumatic for another person. So it's really how we experience it. And then lastly, effects. What impact or what effect does it have on that person, on their physical, social, emotional, spiritual well-being? So with trauma, what might be traumatic for one person might not be for another person. And so this definition in looking at the events, the experiences, and the effects can really help us understand that. So here's a quick exercise to help you think of that. In the blocks or the squares, you see single events. Your sibling or your partner yells at you for leaving dirty dishes in the sink. You experience the death of a parent or a primary caregiver. There's a wildfire that threatens your home. You cut your toe. You get in a fender bender. And then in the middle, in those three circles, you see responses to events. So, does it cause a worrisome feeling? Does it cause a brief temporary feeling of discomfort? Or is it a concern that persists for a period of time? And you have some physiological impact. Maybe you don't sleep well. Maybe it gets in the way of your relationships and you're irritable. Or is that event really upsetting to you? Does it cause persistent fear or anxiety? Does it impact your sleeping and eating and have a significant impact on your interpersonal relationships? So just kind of in your head, draw a mental map from some of those events to how it makes you feel, to the response that you would have in each of those situations. So, and the point here really is that trauma is an event. Trauma is how an event is experienced by an individual as harmful or threatening. So, what might be harmful or threatening to one person may not be to another person. Okay. Next slide, Melissa. Here are some experiences that could be traumatic for some people. Again, what might be traumatic for one person might not be for another. But some of these things, community or school violence, psychological, sexual, physical abuse, commercial sexual exploitations, military-related stressors, neglect, these are all things that could be traumatic experiences. And the point of this slide really is to show that exposure to trauma is common for all children. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has found that 2/3 of children experience a potentially traumatic event by the age of 16. So trauma and other adverse experiences can have profound effects on development. And what we want to focus on here is that that's true even for infants or very small children, even before they can talk. So the body can store and remember those traumatic events, even, events that when they're very young or an infant. So you're never really too young to feel the impacts of traumatic stress. And these impacts are vast and they can be seen across all different domains. It can affect physical health, emotions, behavior. It can affect mental health. It can have an impact on relationships. It can have profound impact on brain development and on cognition and learning. So trauma really cuts across all these different domains. And trauma can also have pervasive and long-term effects. Exposure to trauma, especially repeated exposures, can cause developmental trauma and really change the way a child views the world. So rather than seeing things, having developing nurturing and stable attachments, children may develop a basic mistrust of adults. Rather than having a positive self-worth, they may assume that others will not like them. And rather than having a positive a view of their future and what might be, they may have fear and pessimism about the future. So it really can affect their impact in their worldview. And really, all this that we're talking about is found in a lot of research. And one big study that you may have heard of, or now that you're thinking about trauma, that you may come across and you may hear about, is called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. And this study was done in the 1990s. It was a really large-scale research study. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the ACE study. And it looked at how adversity early in life, as we were saying, as young as infant and childhood, can really affect physical, mental, and behavior health later in life. And it really showed a clear connection between these events in early childhood and negative health outcomes later in life. So this survey asked participants about different types of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunctions that they experienced as a child, and then resulted in this graphic, which shows that as they experienced more of these kind of events, more of these experiences, they had a greater health impacts later in life. Next slide. And really what was found that the more ACEs, the more of these events or experiences that a person had, the more health risk behaviors the person experienced. And health risk behaviors are things like not eating a healthy diet, not exercising, using substances like tobacco or alcohol or drugs, often to help cope with the stressors of life, missing work. And then what we found is that the greater the ACE score, the greater the risk of these health risk behaviors, and then eventually a greater incidence of actual health consequences, such as diabetes, depression, heart disease.
All right, good job, Renee. So she kind of explained the basics of traumatic stress. So now we're really going to understand what that does. And we really can't understand stress until we really talk a little bit about, or trauma, if we talk a little bit about what's going on inside our brains. And adversity doesn't just happen to children, it happens inside their brains and their bodies. And the way to look at this is through the brain states. So we have our brain stem, which is the survival brain. And that's the primary question that brain is going to be asking all the time is, am I safe? And if the answer feels like no, that is when your body's going to go into fight, flight, or freeze. And learning and reasoning are never going to be possible in this state when your body is not feeling safe. When your brain is telling you you're not safe, you're not going to be able to learn. You're not going to be able to reason. There's also the limbic system, which is the emotional brain. And that primary question it's going to be asking all the time is, am I loved? Am I connected? And when kids don't feel emotionally safe or connected, we often see behaviors that look like attention seeking. So like you'll see somebody acting out, you're like, oh, look, they want attention, but really they're connection seeking. They really want somebody to notice them and connect with them. And then their prefrontal cortex, which really doesn't develop until, the mid-20s, is really the thinking brain. And that question is always going to be, what can I learn? And that's where you're going to see things like executive functioning skills and really being able to understand time management and more of the complex thinking. And it was really but it can't be accessed until the survival brain and the emotional brain feel safe. So when we're looking at brain development, we're looking at first some neural networks. And if you can see on the slide, as a newborn, there's very few neural networks that are, then these are going to be pathways of what's happening in our brain. So obviously when you're a newborn, you only have a few, and then they continue to grow and grow as you get older. And you kind of look at the neuro networks as they're pathways that are experienced or are through our experiences. And where it says there, neurons that fire together, wire together. So your brain is constantly working, your brain is constantly developing. And there's times where you don't even realize things are happening, or you'll hear a song and there'll be like a memory, like, oh, I remember, like that brings back a feeling just from hearing a song. Or sometimes like I'll be at work and then I'm like, oh man, I only remember being on 66. Like, how did that happen? But I've driven to work so many times that my brain just takes me there, and it's not something that I need to think about. Unfortunately, sometimes when you're looking at somebody who's been in traumatic stress, then it's going to be the opposite, where their brain is constantly thinking of the trauma and thinking of stress, and it's not firing in a positive way. So one of the things we look at that is the window of tolerance. And the window of stress tolerance is really your ability to handle emotions. And everybody has a window of stress tolerance where, and you just think about your day where like you're going along fine and everything's fine. And a little blip happens, like, oh, you get stuck in traffic or your child yells at you and you're like, oh, that's fine. I can handle that. But then, if it just keeps on happening and things just keep going, that's when you become dysregulated. Like, by the third time you've walked in and the house is still a wreck and you've asked your kids to clean up and you kind of, flip your lid a little bit and start screaming at them, that's when you're getting dysregulated and you're out of your window of stress tolerance. However, kids or people that have experienced trauma are almost always out of their window of stress tolerance. Their window of stress tolerance is very little. So something that seems like it's not that big a deal to us, to them, because their window of stress tolerance is so little, it really becomes a mountain out of a molehill. Like, it's a very small little problem. It's not that big a deal. I just asked you to complete this math assignment, and you're completely screaming, flipping desks in the classroom, or breaking things or whatever, and all I asked you to do was something that should have been a simple thing, but their window of stress tolerance is so low that asking a demand at that time when they're already triggered just completely makes them lose their mind. So that can, we're dealing with stress all the time. So if you look here on this slide, we're talking about, sometimes, and stress can be good and stress can be bad. So, sometimes even being excited about something, like I'm really excited about going on vacation, and you get really excited, but you're also, that's also stressful. So, and then for somebody who's experienced trauma, it's also all that unknown, like, oh, I'm getting ready to go on vacation. I should be excited, but then what happens if, and then all these, things start coming into your head. So you're kind of dealing with stressors all the time, whether it's a good stress or a bad stress. And again, if you have a good window of tolerance, you can handle the ups and downs of a typical, events that are happening throughout your day. But when trauma or toxic stress affects your developing brain, then it really impacts your ability to stay regulated. And again, when your brain has been told over and over again that they're not safe, whether, again, and we look at felt safety, and that's something where it's your ability to feel safe at any time, and felt safety is completely subjective. So something, again, where you would say, this is you're safe, that there's nothing that's going to happen to you, but then the person does not feel safe. And if they continually feel not safe, then their brain is going to constantly tell them, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. And then they're going to have, then they're going to react because they feel that they are not safe. Their brain is telling them that they're not safe. So it's even like if you're in a parking lot at night and you're getting ready to walk to your car, and you're in downtown Fairfax. There's no crime that's been reported in this parking garage ever. There's some lights, in your mind, like you kind of tell yourself, I'm safe, but your brain is also telling you, like, I don't know, like, it is a little dark. I'm by myself. I don't know. And you're really kind of looking around. If somebody comes up beside you and starts walking with you as a friend, or if you even like sometimes I do that, I pick up my phone and call somebody like, hey, I'm walking through someplace, just talk to me as I'm going. Having somebody come alongside of you really can help during those felts when you're feeling not safe. And even if you know that you should feel safe, having somebody coming with you also helps make you feel safe. So what happens in the children's nervous system is what we're trying to do is how we can help them feel safe. And when they don't feel safe, they're going to either they're going to fight, they're going to flight, or they're going to freeze. I've also heard things like fawn, where they just kind of just completely pretend, like mask how they're acting. I've also heard fib. So sometimes where somebody is just like completely lying about something, when like when you say, hey, did you do that? And they're lying, again, that's a stress response. So, and fighting is obviously when you ask them to do something or something happens, they're going to either verbally fight or physically fight. And then flight just means they're just going to run away. And then freeze just means they completely shut down. So these are the ways that your body responds to trauma. And then for kids who have experienced trauma, again, they're going to have a very short fuse. They're going to seem very self-focused because you're like, but because they're so worried about their own safety, like it's going to look like, like they don't care about anybody else in the world but themselves, but it is because they're in that survival brain. And they're going to have really difficulty shifting from big emotions to problem solving. And they really do get stuck. And so when they're stuck, these are some of the things that we see. They will have physical symptoms like aches and pains. They'll be irritable and have angry outbursts, school avoidance and refusal. I'm thinking, I have a son who has some trauma, and he experienced all three of those this morning. So poor academic performance, regression or loss of skills, where that he knew this and then now he doesn't know this. Too much or too little sleep, worry, anxiety, disruptive or disrespectful behavior, problems relating to others and forming relationships, substance abuse, and withdrawal. So these are some of the trauma impacts, what it might look like. And we do need to remember that behavior is communication. So it says here, behavior is the language of trauma. Children will show you before they tell you that they are in distress. So we need to know that they're not giving you a hard time, they are having a hard time. So again, they might not be able to tell you that they're scared or that they're bothered or that something happened, but they're acting out and they're doing the things on the previous slide, like, meltdowns, withdrawal, aggression, because they're trying to tell us something, but just not in a, nice, easy, quiet way. So we're going to do a little bit of talking a little bit specifically about some traumas. So we're going to play a game called What's Going On, and it's going to be, I'm going to give you a scenario, and then you're going to go from there and discuss what you think might actually be happening behind the behavior in order to see if we can decode that. So Renee, do I need to stop share so you can share?
Yeah, so people can hit that QR code there. Give them a second to do that. I also put a link in the chat if you prefer just to go right from your computer. But give everyone a second to look at that QR code, and then I will open the game and share my screen.
And if you're unable to do that, if you're like on a phone or something, you can still play along. All right.
All right, I think they're good.
Okay, so I will.
Yep, I will now share. Here.
And just so you know, I mean, there are no wrong answers. It's really, it's going to be, again, we talked about Trump, it's subjective. So, there could be two or, 2, 3, 4, 5 different answers, and it could be depending on the situation. You're not getting graded, so it's okay. And you can choose more than one answer also.
All right. You see my screen there, Melissa?
I'm seeing the Menti code, so is that what you want to show?
No.
No, you're showing the screen. It's good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
All right, good.
Okay. All right. So the first the first scenario is a transition explosion. A 7-year-old suddenly screams, throws their pencil, and refuses to leave the classroom for recess when the teacher says it's time. So what do you think is going on? So real quick, so the choices are sensory overload, hypervigilance, which is really a state of executive or extreme alertness of one's surroundings, driven by a feeling of constantly being on guard for potential danger. So it's really like kind of just being really hypervigilant, like looking around and making sure that you're safe. An executive functioning delay, and then executive functioning is really your cognitive skills that help a person manage their thoughts, emotions, and actions to achieve the goals. Include working memory, flexible thinking, and self-control. And then attachment insecurity, fight, flight activation, a shame response, a trauma reminder or trigger, or there's not enough information. So thinking of this 7-year-old, what do you think it might be?
Great. We have lots of answers coming in, lots of thoughts.
Great. All right. Great. So yeah, so it looks like we have lots of trauma reminder triggers and sensory overload. So, transitions are a major challenge for many trauma-impacted individuals. So they end up losing, they lose predictability. Their brain is searching for danger. It's just kind of usually that weird, like they were doing something and then now all of a sudden the teacher's asking you to do something else, and that transition is really hard. Their survival brain may activate suddenly. And even positive transitions can sometimes still cause them uncertainty. All right, great. All right, so the next one is the homework shut down. A teen stares at their homework, then puts their head down and won't respond when asked questions. So again, the same choices are up on the board. What do you think is happening in that teen's brain? All right. Yeah, great. I see lots of votes for executive functioning delays and shame response and, in trauma, and these are all very likely. Shutdown is often your freeze part of your traumatic response, not laziness, where some people would be like, oh, he's just being lazy. The teen's brain may be overwhelmed, embarrassed, or triggered by past failures. Like, oh, I've tried this before. I don't know the answers to this. So they often just feel like they don't know how to start, and they feel unsafe or even incapable. And so that's where you're also going to get with some shame response. Great. All right, so the over-the-top reaction. We talked about making a mountain out of a molehill. A 10-year-old bursts into tears when told to correct a single math problem. What is going on? Yeah. So again, lots of people are saying shame and then trauma reminder trigger. And that's very possible. Kids who experience chronic criticism or unpredictability may interpret even gentle corrections as a rejection or danger. The reaction isn't really about the math problem. It's about what past experiences being activated. All right, and then the last one is the clingy morning drop-off. A 4-year-old clings to their caregiver every morning, crying and refusing to enter the classroom. What's going on? Yep. Yep. So definitely some attachment insecurities, but you're also probably some sensory overload, some hypervigilance. It's really the child just saying, I don't feel safe enough to go in yet. And we need to remember that this is a need. This behavior is telling us something. It's not manipulation. It's not that the child is trying to make you late for work, that there really is something that's making them not feel safe yet. All right, great. Go back and I will share my screen. Go through this real quick. All right. Renee.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about what's happening in the brain and the body and why it's happening. And so now we're just going to look at some ways that we as adults can respond in ways that promote safety and support for kids that are experiencing traumatic stress and reactions to that. So really, like I said, we're going to look at some strategies, but there are a variety of strategies out there that can help minimize traumatic stress, and we're just going to look at some of them. We have, at Form Families, we have other, Melissa does the big baffling behaviors, and we have other webinars and stuff to look at other strategies, but we'll just focus on a handful of strategies that can help improve resilience of our kids and help them to handle traumatic stress. And with that being said, resilience is the ability to adapt and thrive despite challenges that arise from adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant stress. And that doesn't mean that that our kids are not gonna have stress in their life or they're not gonna have difficulties. It's just having tools and ways to deal with and regulate and manage those stressors. If you can think back to that image that Melissa showed you with the blue zone of the area where the child is able to handle those stressors. What we want to do is give them tools to be able to stay in that and hopefully even, increase that resilient zone that they have, that area where they're able to handle stressful situations. And Melissa touched on this, but as adults, it's hugely important that we remember that behavior or that a need drives a behavior, that there's a function or a need behind the child's behavior, that a child will behave if they can behave. So really, for the first thing that we need to do is trying to figure out, trying to understand what that need is. Why are they acting out? Why are they shutting down? Why are they avoiding going into the classroom? To try to figure out what that need is, and to respond to that need. And in doing so, we need to be detectives. We need to look for stressors, identify the stressors that are causing a behavior, and try to reduce them. We need to look for unmet needs. Does the child have a need for some attention? Is there a need for some help with something? Look for those needs that are causing that behavior and try to meet them. And then also look at skill deficits and teach them. And those skill deficits could be academic or behavior or social skills. Is the child, acting out because they don't know how to do these math problems? Or does the child not know how to make friends or how to talk to a peer, appropriately? And so finding those skill deficits and meeting them, because our kids really will do well if they can. So we need to make sure that we are, reducing or removing those stressors and fulfilling those needs in a way that is pro-social and that where they can behave in a way that we want them to. It's really important that we connect before we correct our children. It's really important, and it's all about that relationship, that need for that child to feel safe, to feel regulated, in order to be able to listen and be in that smart part of their brain, be in that learning part of their brain. And in doing so, we need to create safe, predictable, and consistent relationships. In order to do that, we need to engage in active listening, really listen to our kid and be able to, paraphrase back and let them know that we hear them. It's important to use gentle, affirming language. I think, it's really easy when they're yelling to yell back, but it's important to, maintain gentle language and gentle gestures. Routines that are predictable are super important to kids, especially kids who have experienced trauma. Knowing what the routine is, being able to predict what comes next, what they're going to need to do next, is really important, as well as having really clear and consistent rules and consequences for behaviors. And then lastly, making sure that we follow through on our word, what we say we're going to do, that we follow through on those actions. As adults, we really need to pay attention to our language. Things like I know a common thing that parents say to their kids is, "What were you thinking?" And instead of using that language, try a more positive approach. Saying, "I'm going to help you with that." Instead of saying, "How many times do I have to tell you?" Say, "I'm going to do this, so it'll be easier for you. I'm going to help you do this, or I'm going to do this part so that it'll be easier for you." If you don't stop that, no Xbox for a week. Instead, try something like, "I can see this is tricky for you. We're going to solve this later. Let's go get a drink of water." Here, we're taking a moment to let the kid get regulated by having a drink of water, stepping away from the problem, and then being able to problem solve once their thinking brain is back in action. Another one, "Stop, you're embarrassing me." Instead, try this. "Let's go somewhere quieter where we can sort this out." Redirecting them and bringing them back into their thinking brain where you can problem solve, rather than in the heat of the moment when they just aren't able to do anything or hear anything. Here's another strategy you can use. It's called "I wonder." A lot of times, kids don't have the language that they need in order to articulate how they're feeling or what's going on. So prompts like "I wonder" can help them to say how they're feeling and also to generate and brainstorm solutions. So things like, "I wonder if you really like PE and you feel sad when this class ends." Or, "I wonder if writing makes you feel icky and frustrated." "I wonder if it's hard for you to leave home and start your day at school." "I wonder if the lunchroom is too loud for you and you would prefer an option to eat in a more quiet space." So all these things, help our kids identify the emotion they're feeling when they don't have the words or when they don't have the ability to express how they're feeling, and then it opens up a chance to communicate. You're giving them ideas, but you're also opening up conversation where they can maybe say like, "Oh no, it wasn't that the writing that writing, was frustrating. It was that I didn't like the topic we were writing about." So it really just opens up communication by you saying, "I wonder." It doesn't say that this is the way it is. You're just giving them a chance to brainstorm and open up a conversation. So a lot of kids don't really know how they're feeling. They don't have a word to label their emotions. And so one of the things as adults we can do is help our kids, learn emotions to be able to identify the emotions and the feelings that they're having, so that they do have those words to be able to ask for help or to be able to express how they're feeling. Um, we can teach them, like literally teach them name of the feelings using books or um, I know one of the things we have, and I've seen in a lot of therapist offices and school counselor offices are, just pictures of all the different, feeling emotions and helping our kids learn the different feelings to practice them at home and, showing them different faces. Is this happy? Oh, this is frustrated. So that they have those feeling words and are able to use them. Um, and modeling the skill, like, when you're having a big feeling, saying like, wow, I'm really frustrated trying to get this screw out of this toy. It's really stuck. And helping them to learn emotion words by you modeling them. One of the biggest skills that we can help teach our kids are self-regulation skills. And these are this is something that you want to work on, like not in the heat of the moment, not when they're having a big emotion, but when they're in a calm mood, working on ways to help them learn how to self-regulate themselves when they are having a big emotion. Teaching them things like belly breathing, or counting backwards from 20, progressive relaxation of their muscles, leaning against, pushing their muscles against the wall and feeling the different muscles in their body tense and become loose. Things like this that we can practice with our kids when they're in a calm state, and then hopefully they can use when they are feeling a big emotion. And one of our favorite, I'll show just a couple minutes. One of our favorite deep breathing things is an Elmo video here. And this is really great for younger kids, but you can find a lot of stuff on the web on deep breathing and muscle relaxation. A lot of things that would be, more adaptable to your teens or even to yourself. Because learning how to regulate our own emotions when our kids are acting out is a really important part of this process. A lot of
Okay, let me pause this. Pause it. All right, perfect.
great,
Just
great.
wanted to keep playing.
Yeah. And here are some other strategies and supports, things that you can use. Cue cards can be great. They can offer appropriate options for behavior. Social stories are books that we can use that teach and validate our emotions and teach kids how to evaluate emotions. Books are a really great way to help, especially with our elementary age kids and learning how to identify emotions and ways to socially appropriate ways to handle those emotions. Sensory tools can be really helpful, calming things like this glitter bottle you see here, the squishy snake, ways that they can engage their senses and help calm them down. And then there's a feeling thermometer here, which, like I was talking about with the cards with the different faces, are just a way for a kid to show like, well, this is how I'm feeling, on the thermometer or on the picture cues. Here's another strategy you can use. These are called ampersand cards. A lot of times as parents, we say things like, I know you're really angry, but you can't hit. And that but can really negate the way kids are feeling. And if we change that but to an and, I feel angry and we can validate their feelings and then at the same time give them tools. And this is something you can do with kids when they're in a calm state. You can identify trigger points and feelings that cause them problems within the classroom or at home, and then come up with solutions together that you can write on the back of the card. So in this one, I feel angry and and here are some options. You can find a quiet place to sit. I can anchor my feet. I can picture a stream, or I can practice my square breathing. And here, we've given them choices so that they feel some control in the situation. But they're all, socially appropriate choices that they can use when they're feeling that anger. And here's just another one. I don't know how to start my homework. I can ask for help. Can you explain that part again? Can I show what I know another way? Can I talk it through with you first? So we're really just giving the kids the tools to figure out what to do next, and choices. And now we've got another fun game. So
Right. So we're going to play myth or reality. So there will be some trick questions. So think like a brain scientist. Again, there's a QR code that you can access. And there's 10 questions that we're going to ask you, kind of like, is it, true or false? We'll say, is it a myth or is it a reality? We'll give everybody a second to do that. I think, Renee, you can also put it in the chat.
The link is in the chat as well. So if you
Perfect.
can't get the QR code to work, the link is in the chat.
Yeah. And again, the same thing. If you just want to play along and not do the QR code, you can do that too. All right.
All right. Let's share my screen here.
Oh, so let me stop sharing. Sorry. All right.
Okay, myth or reality? Uh-oh. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, there we go.
All right.
All right, I see people coming in. We got lots of great icons. Remember what you are so you can watch your progress. All right. All ready? Okay. Looks like it's
All right.
on. I'm going to start it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so myth or reality? The brain cannot learn when it doesn't feel safe. So is that a myth or is that a reality? That the brain cannot learn when it doesn't feel safe?
Five more seconds.
A few people chatting in too, so that's perfect. All right. So yes, that is a reality. So remember that lack of safety activates survival brain, and so you're not able to learn in your survival brain. All right. Next question. Myth or reality? The trauma responses can look like defiance. So when children are acting defiant, it could be a trauma response. Is that a myth or a reality? All right. Yeah. Again, so trauma can look like defiance. It can look like disrespect. It can look like all sorts of negative behaviors, but that's really actually a trauma response. Very good. All right. Some good scores here. All right. Question number 3. Calm down Sorry, there we go. Calm down strategies work during a meltdown. Is this a myth or a reality? This is a tricky one. All right. So this is actually a myth because again, once they're in that meltdown, their lid has flipped, that they are just too upset. A lot of times calm down strategies will not work. And instead co-regulation works. Logic is not working. The thinking brain is offline. As I said, that was a little tricky the way it was written. All right. If a child can behave, they will behave. All right, this is definitely a tricky one. So actually, it's a reality. So kids do well when they can. No, we'll say 99% of the kids out there do not want to misbehave. They don't know how to behave in that moment. So that's actually the kids don't choose to be dysregulated. They don't choose to not have these skills. It's just their nervous system is overwhelmed and they cannot behave. So if they can, they will. All right. All right, number 5. The body remembers trauma even if the child can't. So the body remembers the trauma even if the child can't remember it. Yeah, and that is a reality. That is, your implicit memory is powerful and your body will remember things. All right, great. Go with 100% there. All right, question number 6. Trauma impacts sleep, appetite, and pain tolerance. Is that a reality or is that a myth? Yeah, that's a reality. It affects your whole body. All right. Good job. All right, number 7. Kids with trauma need more structure, not less. So kids with trauma need more structure, not less. All right, so again, that is a reality. Structure gives them their safety and their predictability, and that really helps kids with trauma. All right, number 8. You can heal. Oh, sorry, I'm too quick. You can heal while still living in stress, but it will just take longer. So is that a myth or reality? You can heal while still living in stress, but it takes longer. All right, so the answer is reality. So yes, so you can so the great news is that even if people that have experienced trauma and they're having all of these behaviors or having all of these symptoms, they can heal and they can and that's the good news. But it will take a little bit longer, so you're gonna have to be very patient. All right, 2 more. We didn't really talk about this one, so let's see. So, myth or reality? Consequences teach trauma-impacted kids to behave better. Well, I guess we did a little bit, but so consequences teach trauma-impacted kids to behave better. Is that a myth or a reality? Okay. Oh, look at that. Tied half and half thought so. So actually, that is a myth. So anybody that said myth is correct because consequences are not going to rewire the brain. What's going to rewire the brain is going to be that co-regulation and that skill building. So taking something away or punishing them for something, again, it's the brain and it's reshaping the brain. It's not being able to give them consequences. It's not going to help. All right, and then our very last question, myth or reality? Trauma impacts memory, focus, and organization. So is that a myth or reality? All right. Yep. And that is a reality. Executive functioning skills is what those all are: the memory, the focus, and the organization. And trauma definitely affects that. Good job. All right. So we have, looks like we got a few people got all of them right. Very good. Vroom, Stingalicious, and Earthman. Congratulations. Good job. All right. So hopefully that was just a quick glimpse into what we talked about, just to see if you were paying attention and kind of just how that can work in, thinking about it in different ways. I'm going to share my screen again, but I'm going to need to skip through these slides. And then I think so I have a few more things, and one of them is, self-care for you all. I mean, just if you are dealing with one child or many children that have had trauma or have dealt with trauma, one thing it's going to do, it's going to bring up your trauma. So anything that you might have felt or have a feeling like you're watching your child overreact, then you're going to overreact because of your own trauma. So it's just really difficult. I just want to say it's hard. It's hard to care for kids who have experienced trauma. So you want to make sure that you take some time for yourself to pause, to just, like look at your own body and kind of see how it's feeling, like what's going on, like, oh my goodness, I need, and let me just sit down and have some ice water, or let me go, have a cup of tea or something that just, might just help you get into the present moment. And then you want to, reset. So find something that might make you feel steady or more calm, focus on your next task, kind of think about what else you need to do and kind of just reset. And then nourish yourself, maybe do something that's really good for you. Turn on, my biggest thing lately has kind of been turning on some fun music just to get everybody to kind of turn more positive. Just something that you can help replenish your mind, your body, your heart, your soul, and your spirit. And just remember to be good to yourself, because it is hard. All right, so this is just some information about Form Families Forward. This is our website, and I said you can find a plethora of great information on there. We also have a Facebook and Instagram account. You can feel free to follow us, and we will continue to put out all sorts of great information there. And then we have an evaluation for our information, if you would not mind filling that out, which will be added to the chat box.
Thank you so much for all who attended today. And thank you, Melissa, again, and Renee, for the wonderful presentation. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day, all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.